The rise of the Chinese economy has been one of the most important trends over the past 20 years. How did we get here and where are we headed? Dong Tao, Chief Regional Economist for Non-Japan Asia at Credit Suisse, is with us now to discuss. If we look at the rise of China from a historical perspective, is there another trend that it could be compared with, for example, the rise of Japan or the rise of the US?
Well, I think for over the last 100 years, we haven't seen that. Japan, Korea, there are a few countries in the past moved up the industrialization path, but the size of China is different and the impact to the rest of the world is different. The last time we've seen this kind of major movement is from the United States in the second half of 1800s. They both triggered by some kind of revolution. In the US, it was a transportation revolution. In China's case, it's the global outsourcing game. It's the production relocation.
We're now talking about a multipolar world where not one but several nations will dominate the world economy. If we look down the track in 20 or 30 years, will this still be the case if we consider the current growth in China now?
I think the Chinese growth has been very strong, and we are now in a transformation period of time. So it's very difficult trying to do some linear projection about where China is heading to. Certainly China needs to do a lot of structural reforms. China will face the demographics problem, so China must improve the productivity in order to keep going like this. But I do anticipate that the Chinese economy will remain strong at least over the next 20-30 years.
And what about multipolarity within Asia?
It had always been like this. There's no one country dominating for quite a long time. Japan, to some extent, moved ahead of the herd earlier, and that was a time perhaps Japan could claim that it was a leader in Asia. But if you look at the GDP's share of the world, I don't think that Japan's dominance could get to the category that Japan was leading that. I think Asia traditionally has been with a more balanced power in the past and probably will remain this way in the future.
You could argue that the size of the Chinese economy is still to a large extent due to its demography. Is it possible to be the world leading economy with a GDP per capita that is just a fraction of that of leading Western economies?
Well, why don't I give you a little quiz first. How many Chinese cities with more than 1 million population? I'm sure you don't have the answer. 256. Okay, that's the size of the Chinese economy. Population is huge. Whatever multiplied by 1.3 billion, that's a big number. Whatever divided by 1.3 billion, that's a small number. That's the fact in China today. The overall size of the economy is big. It's growing stronger, which is good news. But on the other hand, China is still a developing country, and with a lot of population still struggling with keep up with the living standard. China by no means, despite the size, is a developed country, and that is the reality that China must face.
Leaving the macroeconomic perspective to the side now and then really focusing on the people, through its rise, what have been the biggest changes for Chinese citizens, whether entrepreneurs or farmers or inhabitants in the city, men or women?
I think several things. First of all, people feel a little bit more willing to open and talk. But on the other hand, the regime remains that they control the media, they control many of the other press related, so that it's a struggle between how people want to talk, and people certainly have seen many countries where they do traveling that maybe 30 years ago, very difficult for them to do. So people's mind changing, especially in the internet world, but on the other hand, China's political reform has been lagging behind. The other aspects of changing in China is the society, the mix of the society. Because of 40 years of one-child policy, so the family structure has been changed significantly. And that, in my opinion, will have a lasting impact to the economy, to the society, and to China overall.
You've been studying the rise of the Chinese economy for 18 years now, from both inside and outside, as you've worked in the US and Japan. How have you experienced the changes personally?
Well, when I landed on the job of an economist covering China for investment bank. That was in 1994. Before that, there was no one single economist covering China. There was a Hong Kong economist using 10% of his spare time to do China a little bit. Today, every house has a team covering China. That's how the significance of China has changed as far as the global market is concerned, as far as the global economy is concerned. Even when I just arrived at Credit Suisse, that was 1998, when there are some global presentations. Usually it is the US economy, European economy, and Japanese economy. And nowadays, when we see some of these global tours, it is the US economy and the Chinese economy. If the delegates come to Europe, then they add European economists. If they go to Asia, then they add Japanese economists. It tells you the significance of China in the world nowadays.
Thanks, Dong.
Thank you.
For more information on market movements and global trends, check out News and Expertise on the Credit Suisse website.